Why should the Republican candidate for president, and very possibly the next president of the United States, be concerned even just a little about a former career civil servant? It's unclear why he is, but it should concern all of us that he is. The former civil servant is Andrew McCabe. Back when Trump was president, McCabe was deputy director of the FBI. He's now a senior law enforcement analyst. McCabe earned Trump's ire for his role in the FBI's Russia investigation. He was later fired as deputy director on then President Trump's public urging, just hours short of qualifying for his pension, which he had to sue to get restored. Then he was investigated by the Justice Department, but never charged, raising questions at the time about whether a grand jury had taken the rare step of refusing to bring indictments. Because such proceedings are secret, we may never know. But now, with the former president, his supporters openly calling for revenge and retribution against perceived enemies, McCabe is being targeted again. He's not the only one, we should point out. The former president has spoken of revenge frequently.
Well, revenge does take time, I will say that.
It does.
And sometimes revenge can be justified, Phil. I have to be honest. Sometimes it can.
Now, Trump's advisors and supporters are talking about purging career civil servants if he's elected, especially at the Justice Department, which he's threatening to turn into an instrument of revenge. And now Trump has also been posting on social media, linking to a story about his former strategist Steve Bannon, who's reacting to the concern all this revenge talk is causing, specifically to Andrew McCabe, talking to the source's Caitlin Collins about it.
I have a lot of conversations with former colleagues, people who are or were in the intelligence and law enforcement community and may have worked in, the Obama administration, other places. And, people are really trying to assess, what is life going to be like if Donald Trump wins a second term? And on a very personal level, these are torturous discussions with their family members about whether or not they have to leave the country to avoid being unconstitutionally and illegally detained. People are actually worried about being thrown in jail or grabbed in some sort of extrajudicial detention. And I think, as crazy as this sounds in the United States of America, I think people should really consider that these are possibilities.
So that's what McCabe told Caitlin Collins a short time ago. Bannon then responded saying this.
And McCabe, you should be worried. You should be very worried. But also understand this, brother. We have extradition treaties with virtually every country in the world, and you go ahead and run as far as you want. We're going to come and get you.
So that's a former and perhaps soon to be again senior advisor to Trump who is saying much the same, despite the best efforts of Dr. Phil and Sean Hannity to stop him. And again, they're taking aim with this at perceived political enemies, but also at the day in and day out career professionals of federal law enforcement.
November 5th is Judgment Day. January 20th, 2025 is Accountability Day. We're going to get every single receipt. And to the fullest extension of the law, you are going to be investigated, prosecuted, and incarcerated. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very simple. Victory or death.
And Andrew McCabe joins us now. So when you hear Steve Bannon saying these things and the former president, amplifying comments that you should be worried, what goes through your mind?
Well, Anderson, part of me is not surprised at all. These are things he's been saying forever. We know that Donald Trump and his friend are, these are people who are obsessed with personal grievance and settling scores. Their entire way of thinking about leading and administering this country is in the context of having been wronged and trying to engender support among their supporters by, throwing this kind of red meat out to people who are who respond to this sort of language. So we shouldn't be surprised by it at all. They're both paranoid old men, one of whom is on his way to jail, and the other one, we'll see, that might happen for him as well. So that part doesn't surprise me. What's really, to me, shocking and disgusting about the rhetoric is what it says about who we are becoming as a nation, and the fact that a person who is, quite possibly the next president of the United States is engaging in this level of absolutely fundamentally anti-democratic rhetoric and behavior and ideation. Everything he says stands in direct contrast to the nation that we think we are, the nation that we have always been. But I think people have got to start asking themselves, is this the direction that we want to go? Is this the country that we're becoming, a place where an incoming president takes the levers of power and uses them for his own gratification to pursue enemies?
Right. I mean, if Trump is reelected and Steve Bannon is, in his orbit or still doing his little podcast, and they choose to, the federal government, the White House chooses to go after you, they could make your life really awful. I mean, you would have to hire attorneys. You would have to, at great expense. I mean, I
know
can't even
all
imagine.
about that. Yeah, I know it well, right? They've been doing this to me. Donald Trump's been doing this to me for years. A 2-year baseless criminal investigation that they ended only because it went nowhere and a federal judge essentially forced them to issue a declination. Invasive IRS audit. The only other person I know who's ever been subjected to the same one is Jim Comey, not coincidentally, I'm sure. The Durham investigation, right? Same basic idea. William Barr and John Durham announced that we were all criminals and then spent years traveling around the globe trying to find proof of that, which of course they couldn't, and it came to essentially nothing. So I know what to expect. It's not about me. I'll be fine. It's about people who will be experiencing this for the first time, and more importantly, their families. Like I talk to former officials, and everyone is in the same place. Like we are still committed to this country and seeing this through. We still have faith in the systems that are built to protect the rights of every American. But that's a hard thing to explain to your family when they're thinking, basically they don't want to have to live in this kind of fear and terror for another 4 years.
It also, I mean, what kind of chilling effect does it have on others who are still in law enforcement, others who are still in the FBI about choices they make or decisions they make now?
Yeah, how do you think those agents felt who had the bad luck or misfortune to be assigned to the Mar-a-Lago raid? Search warrant, not a raid. What's happened to them, they've been vilified now, falsely accused by the former president of having been out to somehow assassinate him or take him out, all of which is insanely ridiculous and not true. And there are other indicators that people within government are stepping back from aspects of this work that they think might engender the same sort of scrutiny. In the aftermath of the investigation of possible coordination between the Trump campaign in 2016 and the Russian government, the massive investigation that we mounted to get to the bottom of that, the FISA coverage that we had on Carter Page, which was exposed to have been had contained numerous mistakes. That's all unforgivable, and those wrongs need to be fixed. But in the wake of the nonstop attacks that Donald Trump has levied on the FBI for things like that, is it coincidence that the FBI's use of FISA and domestic FISA coverage is down about 75% from those years? Are the threats facing this nation down 75%? I think not.
And when Steve Bannon talks about the long arm of American justice, using it to pursue you even if you leave the country, I mean, have you thought about leaving the country?
I know what American justice is. I spent 21 years as a law enforcement officer in this country. Steve Bannon has no idea what he's talking about that or probably anything else. People who haven't committed crimes in this country have nothing to worry about.
It just seems to me, I mean, people who have dedicated their lives to public service and civil service, I mean, it is the backbone of our democracy. It is essential for the functioning of this country at agencies all over. And it's extraordinary that somebody who would be running for president already saying, like, this guy, we're going to go after this person.
That's right. That's right. Those protections, those safeguards, that's what this country was built around, to protect everyone from the person in charge. Right? That's why we split off from the Brits so many years ago. That's what we are all about. Everyone is treated the same under the law. Everybody enjoys the same protection. So to have the person who aspires to the highest seat, the highest role, the highest job in the land, to start picking out people like me or anyone else and targeting them for revenge, unleashing the rage of their supporters in however that's played out. It's outrageous, and it's just heartbreaking that that's where we are as a nation.
What does it mean for national security if skilled members of law enforcement, intelligence officials basically leave public service because of these concerns?
It's never been more important than right now that law enforcement and intelligence agencies in this country are able to attract the brightest, smartest, most dedicated people. The threats are more complicated than ever. Our challenges with cyber, everything, right? Hiring is probably the #1 priority in every agency. And the idea that their own potential boss would have such an effect on that community as to drive people out in droves because they are unwilling to subject themselves to this sort of treatment. I mean, it's just absolutely contrary to where we need to be as a nation. It's contrary to the mission of protecting this country and the people in it.
Do you, so what's the next step? I mean, how do you prepare for something like this?
I'm living my life, right? I have the extraordinary opportunity to speak here to people like you, to draw attention to these issues. I will continue to do that. I'm sure people who are similarly situated to me will do the same. I think it's important to keep drawing attention to these things so we see them for what they are. And ultimately, people, of course, will make their own decisions at the end of the election. But, this is my country. This is our country. There's nothing that Donald Trump or Steve Bannon can possibly do to sway me from that.
Andrew McCabe, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.